King 5 broke the story today that 2 more Hanford workers got sick this afternoon from unknown chemical vapors at Hanford, bringing the total to 36 people now since mid-March. Those toxic vapor events prompted King 5 investigator Susanna Frame to report on the human toll of Hanford's dirty secrets. And tonight in her latest story, she reveals a pattern of delays and denials for workers who get sick and apply for a program set up just for them by the Department of Labor.
How many of you believe that you or your loved one got sick from working at Hanford?
I did.
All these people belong to a club they never wanted to join. They've either lost a loved one or are extremely sick after working at Hanford, exposed to toxic chemicals, heavy metals, and solvents at the most contaminated work site in America.
When you've gotten sick, how many of you feel like the government kind of turned its back on you?
I do.
Roger Ibarra and Dick Simonis on the right both have a degenerative lung disease that causes emphysema called COPD. Ron Stevens has that and more.
I've got kidney failure. I've got cancer.
I'm in remission for stage 4 throat cancer and COPD.
Scott Passage's COPD is so advanced, he's coping with just 28% lung capacity.
I'm supposed to be on oxygen 24/7.
Dale Gear worked in the Hanford tank farms for 26 years, where he says the safety teams told him he was protected from metals like mercury and lead. Now he's sick with COPD and brain damage.
How'd you like to breathe that crap in and safety says everything's okay?
I lost my stomach about 1.5 years ago to cancer.
At 49, Terry Wattenberger is constantly in and out of the hospital with COPD, 2 types of cancer, and a muscle disease. 2 years ago, he appeared healthy with a full life in front of him. Since then, he's lost 70 pounds and is struggling to hang on.
So you feel like working there is going to end your life?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's hard. Yeah.
Being sick isn't the only thing this group has in common. Each one has applied for financial help through a U.S. Department of Labor program. It was set up 15 years ago specifically for sick workers who did the secret and dangerous nuclear defense work for the country throughout the Cold War and the ongoing cleanup. But after applying, they all found themselves fighting.
And I fought and I fought and I fought them, and it's a losing battle.
The Department of Labor accepts that the workers in our group interview were exposed to toxins like arsenic, ammonia, asbestos, and cadmium, a metal with radioactive isotopes. But doctors hired by Department of Labor contractors found working at Hanford was not a significant factor in causing, contributing to, or even aggravating their illnesses.
How many of you have been denied once by the Department of Labor?
I have.
Twice?
I have.
3 times?
I have.
This report, commissioned by Congress in 2010, lays out some of the problems with the program. Investigators found there's no oversight of the consultant physicians who have recommended the denials. These are doctors hired by Department of Labor paid contractors to review medical files. They never actually see the patients. The department declined to be interviewed on camera, but sent a statement to say consulting doctors are used not to hurt, but actually to help claimants who may not be able to meet their burden of proof. That's not the way these people see it.
I just think that we're all getting a raw deal. And I don't know why, but they take they follow somebody that really don't know me, that don't know any of us, and is going to stamp a reject on your form.
The congressional investigation also found processing claims can take between a few months to more than 7 years. 7 years. Many sick workers don't have that long, as the medical bills pile up.
I mean, they're running and hiding and denying and denying and denying. And they don't care, and all this money's come out of my pocket. I mean, that's what's irritating me bad.
I could die in 6 months. My lungs are going that fast, and I worry about my wife. That's all.
Because you want her to be taken care of.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We got bills coming in right now.
These workers and survivors of lost loved ones say the system is so cumbersome, so lacking in compassion, that they believe the government is simply waiting them out to save money.
How many of you feel as though the government is waiting for you to die?
Absolutely.
They can outwait, outlast, and outspend any of the workers that I've seen.
Dr. Brian Campbell is a neuropsychologist in Spokane who's evaluated dozens of Hanford workers.
It's very difficult, in my opinion, for the worker to pass that denial threshold.
Of Dr. Campbell's patients, the case of Dale Gear is perhaps the best example of that. Remember, he has lung disease and brain damage. It took Gear 5 years to get the Department of Labor to help him with his COPD. Now he has an in-home nurse once a week to manage that lung disease, along with boxes of drugs and nebulizer treatments.
I'm sick every day. I hurt from the time I get up until the time I go to bed.
Doctors across the country have found working at Hanford most likely caused Gear's illnesses, including his brain damage. One went so far as to say there is no other plausible explanation for the heavy metals in his system, toxins that cause dementia.
And after this letter was written,
he was denied. What more does a person need to do than clearly state that the worker's exposure at Hanford led to the problems described?
The group tells us no one's looking to get rich. They want their medical needs taken care of. And for those already gone, their survivors want to pay the bills left behind, what they thought the U.S. government agreed to when they went to work at Hanford.
They promised if we did get sick, they'd take care of us. And now they kind of just, okay, you know, you don't count now. Because you're out of the mix. You're not labor no more. You're not in the union. You're on your own, and just ain't right.
In PASCO, Susanna Frame, King 5 News.
Just ain't right.
The Department of Labor tells King 5 they've approved about half of the claims submitted by Hanford workers since the beginning of the program. That translates into roughly $1 billion in compensation paid to 10,000 claimants.
And of course, the same thing goes with our policy toward dealing with nuclear seismic testing, which shows most of our nuclear reactors can withstand an earthquake, which we're going to talk about in a minute with Chris Harris. With Fukushima and with WIPP reactors in Carlsbad, New Mexico, where we now have a report that Chris sent me. And Chris, rather than steal your thunder, I want you to read it. We talked about it briefly earlier about the WIPP reactor nuclear site and plutonium-239 actually causing a nuclear explosion. And, of course, the anonymous employee saying they put us in danger. Tell us about the WIPP reactor and what's going on there.
Hello, Dr. Bill. Well, in the WIPP reactor, now remember, this report, there was a potential for the plutonium flash, which is a criticality event. I'm like I said, I haven't done the analysis on that myself. So let's just go talk about what is. What is that the Department of Energy had a decision to cut back on the waste isolation pilot plant's safety requirements to save some money. And in that, they have also decided to make some changes to the packing material that's used in these highly radioactive waste drums, which contain plutonium salts. And they used an organic material instead of a non-organic material. And in fact, I was just talking it over today with one of my colleagues who is very esteemed in waste handling and waste processing. You know, we'll call him Barney for now. But he basically says, is that what they did? They put organic material in? That's a hydrogen explosion. And so, you know, in the presence,
but a hydrogen explosion can trigger criticality. Well, most people don't realize the Crytron switches that use C4 plastic, which is what they used to try to detonate the nuclear weapons back in the 1930s and 40s. They were actually using Crytron high-speed fast switches so they could simultaneously detonate and compress the ball of plutonium to create a nuclear explosion or criticality. When you have a hydrogen explosion, you can likewise create criticality, and what it does is it temporarily increases the neutron flux that causes a chain reaction, and that causes an explosion. So that's how it can happen. Hydrogen-triggered plutonium-239 nuclear explosions can be triggered by hydrogen, right?
That's right. Yeah, it all would depend, you know, whether they're going to achieve a critical mass or not. And there's like different categories of the criticality.
Yeah, but it may only be partial. Maybe it's not. It's not clean, so it's only like 2% of the total mass of plutonium. But enough flux occurs, you get what's called a neutron flux, and then of course it blows up the bomb and disperses all the isotopes all over hell's half acre. So this is what happened with these kitty litter, these green kitty litter from the Department of Energy and the Obama administration. They went green all right, but the green unfortunately was like the, you know, the goblin from, you know, Spider-Man. Yeah. The green was nuclear. It was bad idea. It was turning these things literally into cooking bombs. Crazy.
Yeah, and it didn't have to happen this way. And
right.
What I'm also finding is that what part of the cutbacks? Well, they lost track of specific drums and their locations in big vaults known as panels.
Right.
And so you really don't know where all this material is. Well,
they didn't properly log it. In other words, they didn't log the material properly to be able to track it to which ones they modified with the new green kitty litter, did it?
No, I was, you know what, I was thinking, well, you know, they have impeccable records, and it would be easy to...
You're hoping. You're hoping.
I mean, I just know the way that we do things, and you know, that
way they should be done.
It makes sense. It should be done right, and I guess I was wrong. That it's done in a
well,
more
you guys are impeccable because you're the safety guys who come in to clean up the mess or do a proper evaluation. That's the next question. The seismic testing here in America with the NRC started by Jasco before he was replaced because he was opening too many cans of worms. What's happening there? They finished their evaluation of all these nuclear plants and said, guess what? They all fail, or we're going to study a lot more. Or what's the outcome? What's going on with all these nuclear plants?
Several have failed outright where there's going to be modifications have to be made. I got to go ahead and write you a synopsis of those so that you have an idea. Others can be wished away, provided that there's enough analysis. Wished away is I guess that's a term we use, where you talk about sharpening the pencils and all that. However, it's still that's a lot of work in itself to sell that. You know, you have to actually sell it that you are safe because you have this much margin of safety in the build of your plant. Well, you know that's. Well,
they should have data, though. I mentioned before they should have soil quality data on the structural integrity of welds, crystal data with basically X-ray and ultrasound of all the joints and welds and rivets. They should know the structural integrity of pipes that may be thinned out. They did a couple of years ago. They're actually trying to use a brush to clean out pipes in a nuclear reactor near Chicago. I'm trying to remember the name of the plant. I think we talked about this, and the actual brush went through the pipe. It's like, well, the brush should not go through the pipe.
Newly revealed documents show radioactive waste may have contaminated areas outside the Westlake landfill in Bridgeton. Our Grant Bissell has been poring over these documents all day long. He joins us now with what all this means. Grant?
Yeah, Kay, let's be very clear. First off, experts tell me these findings do not pose an immediate risk to human health, but community members say they do raise a lot of questions. Take a look at this map. The two yellow dots you see represent soil samples taken along St. Charles Rock Road just outside the Westlake landfill. The tests were done in 2005 by the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. One sample found radiation almost 6 times higher than background or naturally occurring levels. The other sample was more than 3.5 times higher. Now, the Army Corps of Engineers tells me the levels would have to be even higher for them to come in and clean up the site. The problem community members has is what they call misleading public statements, like this being made by the EPA.
MDNR did a number of soil samples along Walker Road and Tausig Road in 2005 or something like that, and they did not find anything in those samples. Anything above radiation? Anything above background, is the best of my knowledge.
Now, community members say the test results show radiation levels along the Rock Road are clearly higher than they should be, but the question remains, how did the radioactive material get there in the first place? Mike?
Grant.
King 5 broke the story today that 2 more Hanford workers got sick this afternoon from unknown chemical vapors at Hanford, bringing the total to 36 people now since mid-March. Those toxic vapor events prompted King 5 investigator Susanna Frame to report on the human toll of Hanford's dirty secrets.
Advanced, he's coping with just 28% lung capacity.
I'm supposed to be on oxygen 24/7.
Dale Gear worked in the Hanford tank farms for 26 years, where he says the safety teams told him he was protected from metals like mercury and lead. Now he's sick with COPD and brain damage.
How'd you like to breathe?
Never wanted to join. They've either lost a loved one or are extremely sick after working at Hanford, exposed to toxic chemicals, heavy metals and solvents at the most contaminated work site in America.
When you've gotten sick, how many of you feel like the government kind of turned its back on you?
I do.
Roger Ibarra and Dick Simonis on the right both have a degenerative lung disease that causes emphysema called COPD. Ron Stevens has that and more.
I've got kidney failure. I've got cancer.
I'm in remission for stage 4 throat cancer and COPD.
Scott Passage's COPD is so...
And tonight, in her latest story, she reveals a pattern of delays and denials for workers who get sick and apply for a program set up just for them by the Department of Labor.
How many of you believe that you or your loved one got sick from working at Hanford?
I did.
I did.
All these people belong to a club they